Welcome to the second day of VentureFest and to this VentureFest webinar, which is called How to Double the Size of Your Business. So I'm Ailsa Anderson. I'm the project manager for the Scale Up Northeast programme. And today I'll be talking with Christina Bell from Mabel Group and Pennine Playgrounds about how her business has developed since launching in 2019. So just briefly, just a little bit about Scale Up Northeast. Effectively, the programme is a business support programme where we link business mentors with fast-growing businesses and help to maintain them, sustain them, and increase their growth. Mabel Group and Pennine Playgrounds is one of the businesses that we've worked with since 2019. So, Christina, we're just going to have a bit of a chat today.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about Mabel Group. What does it do? When did you start it? And where are you now?
So we started the company in March 2019, and we started the company as a playground installation company. So we were basically a subcontractor working for bigger playground manufacturers as their installation partner. Me and my boyfriend Dave, who I own the company with, came from within the industry, and we saw a bit of an opening for a company who specialised in just the installation side of the business. So yeah, that's how we got started and where we came from.
What, other than the sort of the little gap in the market, what was it that drove you to decide, actually, I want to run my own business, because rather than working for somebody else and being an employee?
We didn't. So we both were working for the same company, and we both decided that it was time for us to move on from that company. I got another job in the construction industry as a bid writer, and I left and went to that job. And Dave left, and the playground industry in the Northeast isn't booming. There's not lots of companies up here. So Dave didn't immediately find another role that kind of fitted with what he wanted to do. And he previously was a tree surgeon. So Dave started, it sounds like a bit cliche now, Dave literally sold his car and bought a van. Mm-hmm. And we started the business doing that. So we started off just doing people's gardens, bits of tree work, and obviously we kind of naturally fell into playgrounds because that's what we'd been doing before. That was in the January of 2019, and by the March things had really started to take off, and as it happened I was really, really unhappy in my job that I'd been in for about 4 months at that point. And I came home crying one day like, I don't want to do this job anymore. So I handed me notice in, and we decided to give it a month or two and see how it went, and that was that. That's
a big risk. It was a big risk. It was a big leap of faith to take.
I seem to have like an inability to recognise risk. It didn't feel like a bit, I guess I've always been brought up to, if you're not happy, change it. And so it didn't feel like a big risk at the time. I kind of knew I'd be able to get a job, and even if it wasn't the same salary or whatever it was, I knew that I'd be able to get enough to support us on if we needed to, and we kind of just took the leap.
Went for it.
Yeah. And so obviously having me full time, going out and being able to seek business, because Dave was based on site at that point, and he was for quite a long period. He's only fairly recently have we managed to get Dave off site actually. So Dave was very much hands-on, so having me administratively going out seeking new business kind of enabled us to grow the company quite fast. And in those early days, I was doing absolutely everything. Quite quickly we got a little office because I couldn't work from home. It grew quite fast.
It's a good ethos to have, especially in saying, so, the transition from being an employee to being an entrepreneur is quite a major one, as I say. So I think to have that risk and ambition behind you.
Yeah, I think that transition from employee to business owner, I didn't realise the difference. Back when we first started it, I always considered myself a really dedicated employee. I always went above and beyond. I'd go away for work for months at a time, and I was always very, very invested in my job, even when I was an employee of somebody else's business. And I've worked for big companies and small ones. And so I think I was probably a little bit naive about what it really means to have your own business, which I think is a good thing. I think it's good to go into it not fully understanding what you're getting into. because the difference, and I'm quite an emotionally charged person. You know, Dave's very relaxed and very, you know, he's able to switch off. I can't switch off. I haven't switched off in 3 years. Whereas, you know, Dave is able to switch off a little bit. So yeah, that change from employee to owner was massive. And to be honest, we still haven't quite got the balance right yet. You know, it's really difficult to, particularly when you're in a relationship with a co-owner. You know, our personal and professional lives are very intertwined, and there's far too many Saturday nights when you're having dinner and you find yourself talking about your employees and things like that.
Yeah.
It's really, really difficult balance to get.
So you almost need an embargo on work talk after. But you can't do that if you're running your own business.
Yeah.
You can't.
And we talk to each other surprisingly little throughout the working day, because I'm office based and quite often he's out and about, and he's recently made the transition into being more office based, which sure you won't mind me saying he struggles with a little bit, because he's been really hands on for years and years.
Yeah.
Even, you know, before we started the business, he was always a hands on employee in other businesses. So it is by far the most difficult. Luckily, me and Dave hadn't been together that long. We'd been together a little while, but when we started the business, it was kind of all we've ever known. So it works quite well for us. But it is, you know, I still haven't managed to find the trick to having a holiday and not.
There's no one left behind to look after the business.
Yeah, we've got really good employees and they do. But I just, you know, I think if you're that kind of person who can't switch off, you just can't switch off. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you started the business with Dave, as I say, and by the end of the first year, your turnover was $250,000.
Yeah.
So it did grow really, really quickly almost from a standing start.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. So where did some of the clients come from? You said that you went out to find the clients.
Yeah.
How did you find them so quickly?
We literally just approached them. So we made a list of playground manufacturers that we liked. So, you know, there's a lot of them out there. So ones that we kind of, you know, their product and their business and their ethos appeared to kind of match up with what we wanted to do. And we literally I pulled together a small presentation, used my bid writing skills and got in touch with them, picked up the phone, got in front of them at meetings and kind of pitched our company to them. Started off doing 1 or 2 small jobs, and we pretty quickly became installation partner for a small handful of companies. I think we took on our first employee. At first, Dave was just whatever mate he could find who would work with him. And then probably by the June, I think we took on our first employee, which was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. You know, the thought of, at this point, we were just amazed that we were paying our mortgage every month. We were like, oh, we're still paying the mortgage. It's amazing. And then so to take on an employee and give them a salary was absolutely terrifying. But yeah, we literally just went out and approached people and
it worked?
It worked, yeah. We had a good product and we were onto a good thing with a small company, and Dave being really hands-on. And don't get me wrong, we've had our challenges as the company grew. Normal challenges that growing companies do have, I think. But yeah.
Excellent. So you came on to Scale Up Northeast in August 2019. And I think at the time I linked you up with Tony Brooks, who's one of our Scale Up partners. And he then introduced you to API Play, which is a national play group association. Is that right?
Yeah, the Association of Play Industry. So the API is kind of the national body that governs playground manufacturing and installation in the UK. It's optional. You know, the companies don't have to be part of it. We are. And how I met Tony was actually, you guys did match me with him, but I actually bumped into him in our building where we're based, and he was working with another guy in the building.
Number 33, that's right.
Yeah, number 33, yes. And I bumped into him in the corridor and we got chatting, and it just so happened that Tony knew Mark Hardy, who's the chairman of the API, and also had other connections within the industry. So it was I don't believe in stuff like that, but it was a bit of a strange coincidence. Yeah, a little bit fateful that I bumped into Tony that day. So that was when we joined the Scale Up programme. Okay.
And what happened from the conversations that you started to have with API?
So I hadn't known Tony that long, and he gave me the contact details of Mark, and I kind of gave him a call and just explained to him. He was very generous with his time, you know, he's a busy man, and I gave him a call and explained who we were and what we were trying to do and what our ambitions were. And I'll never forget the conversation because it changed the course of my life. So Mark said, "Oh, how ambitious are you?" And I said, "Oh, well, we're really ambitious. You know, we've quit our jobs. This is where we're at. This is what we're doing." And he said, "Oh, I know a couple who own a company and they're looking to move on. They want to sell the company. Would you be interested?" And me being me, I just went, "Yeah, why not?" So Dave got home that night, and I think I might have forgot to tell him the first day. Then, like the next day, I was like, "Oh, by the way, we're going to meet this couple about buying a company." And Dave was like, "What?" And I was like, "We had no money. Like we didn't have any savings. We didn't have we'd only just. I mean, by this point, Mabel was probably only months old, and I was like, "Yeah, well, we'll just go and we'll see what it's like." So Tony came with us, and we went and met with. Mark came and Vicky and Graham, the couple who we ended up buying Pennine off, and we met them. Felt a bit sordid actually, like a Weatherby, it's a hotel near Weatherby, and we met them and yeah, we got talking to them, and that was, I think by the time that all happened, that was probably November 2019.
Yeah.
So we kind of just had that initial meeting, and then we started the ball rolling quite slowly from that point, and then COVID happened.
Right.
So we had been, you know, we weren't committed, there was nothing like that, but then COVID happened. So we kind of knocked the plan on its head once March 2020 came around. And then in the June of 2020, the couple who we bought it off got in touch with us and said, "Look, we really want to go ahead. Do you want to?" And we said yes.
So what does it feel like? Because Pennine was almost double the size of
More
than double.
Yeah, so Pennine
the
was
size of Mabel.
4 or 5 times the size of our company at the time.
So it was a bit David and Goliath.
Yeah. I think it didn't feel that scary because we'd came from working in companies of a similar size anyway. So actually it was, by the time we came to buy Pennine, Mabel was getting bigger and bigger, and to be honest, we probably should have taken on more staff, you know, kind of office staff and that kind of thing. It was at the point where we did need a bit of support, but because we knew that the acquisition of Pennine was in the pipeline, we didn't want to take on staff in the northeast. Pennine's based out of Yorkshire. We knew that they had office staff down there, so we kind of it was difficult to grow Mabel and kind of move into Pennine. So it was actually just quite exciting. I was really excited to have colleagues in the office. I'd been on my own. I was doing absolutely everything, you know, from ordering skips to the finance side of things, and I was every level of it. I was doing everything. So it was just quite exciting, and it didn't feel that intimidating at the time. It felt quite natural to be going into a company of that size, because that's kind of where we came from.
And you'd not really been involved in doing obviously a business acquisition before. So what sort of help did you need to have to be able to do that? For example, like the valuation of the business and the raising of the finance that you needed.
Yeah. So we. A lot of help. So we, Tony introduced me to nearly everyone I needed actually. So we had an accountant who dealt with the kind of strategic acquisition side of things. So he did all the due diligence and that kind of thing. And it was kind of our accountant working with their accountants to come up with the valuation and things like that. And obviously what we ended up paying in the end was impacted by COVID. And then we had a solicitor who dealt with the share purchase agreement. I'm still not even sure that they're the right words. So it was mainly kind of accountant, solicitor, kind of giving you the advice of, to be honest, still, I'm certainly not an expert in acquiring businesses even today. It is mind-boggling.
Everyone is different.
Yeah.
What you go through each time will be different. So.
Yeah, we had a hell of a lot of support. Yeah.
So was there ever a point where you just nearly changed your mind and went, "Oh, God, this is way too scary, I'm not doing it. It's too risky, I'm not enough, stop, pull out"?
No. Probably only when COVID happened, that was the one time where we kind of... no, we kind of just
went for it.
Yeah.
And took the risk. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So when did the acquisition then finalise? So when did you become Mabel and Pennine Playgrounds?
August 2020, so the very end of August
Right.
2020.
Uh-huh.
So we went into, it was a bank holiday weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we went down there and we were there from the business as usual on the Tuesday.
And since then, obviously, when you acquire a business, the acquisition itself can be a challenge, but then you've got the whole challenge of trying to bring two companies together. So what have you had any issues since then about that merge, the sort of the merger of the two companies?
Loads, yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah, it's been really, really challenging. So we haven't actually merged the two companies yet.
Right.
That they still technically operate separately.
Yeah.
Although they do day to day operate very, very closely. One day that will happen, and we've always been very open that will be the case. But for now, we haven't quite made that jump. To be honest, it's probably harder operating them separately. There's been loads of challenges, challenges that we knew would happen. You have challenges with staff. There was probably about 20 staff at Pennine when we took over that obviously they'd been under the same ownership for almost 30 years. They were nervous about us, we were nervous about them, and there was all the kind of normal human resource kind of challenges that come along with that. We've had challenges in that, the nature of their business, the way it's set up is really different to how we operated. Even like really basic things like, the company, because it's 30 years old, really heavily paper-based and, things like that. Whereas me and Dave, when we set up the company, we didn't even have a printer. So we just by nature ended up not being, we used Dropbox and everything was electronic, and our teams would get their information about projects electronically, whereas we went to Pennine and they had paper everywhere, filing cabinets everywhere. So even things like that have been, and we're still probably working our way through those types of challenges now, because the team there were really used to working in a certain way, and there's lots and lots of different, it's not just as simple as going, well, change it from paper. There's processes and procedures that people are used to doing, so that has been a challenge as well. And then just, I think the one thing I've said more than anything over the last year is, the 2020 vision. And, I think the pandemic in August 2020, it felt like it was on its way out. It felt like things were returning to normality. And so we proceeded with the acquisition thinking that, and probably not mentally prepared for the challenges that then came 2021 with, price increases, people isolating last summer. Our industry, our teams on site, our installation teams work in relatively small teams. Deadlines are relatively tight. It's not like a big construction project where you're on site for months and months and months. Sometimes a job might only be days, sometimes it might be weeks. A long one might be a couple of months. And so having people off and that kind of thing had a really big impact on our year last year. And we had a record year for sales last year, which was amazing, but actually that was really, really challenging to deliver during our first year, during that transition period. So there's been many challenges. And I think as well, one of the challenges that I had was I'd went from kind of senior management positions in other companies to running our own company where I was doing everything. And I almost lost my ability to manage and delegate a little bit. So then when we went to the bigger company, I was so used to having that full overview of everything. I turned into one of those crazy owners that I used to do my head in when I worked for other companies, where because you are so used to having that oversight and just so being able to hand over that workload and actually doing it was, don't get me wrong, I wanted to hand it over, but it was probably more challenging than I'd anticipated.
It is a difficult thing to say, because once you've been in control and you've understood everything that's going on in the business, stepping back and then letting other people and giving other people the reins to be able to have that control, some of that control themselves, and trusting them is a really tough thing. How did you enable yourself to do that and step back? Because as a business owner, I think that's probably one of the hardest things to achieve. Is that letting go a little bit and trusting other people that they're going to be able to do the job as well as you can.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's probably one of the things, I'm not going to say the only thing, one of the things that I probably didn't do very well. So not so much in that I didn't trust people or that I didn't want to hand it over, but because the two businesses, and I'm going to talk about paper and electronic again, but it sounds like a silly thing, but because the businesses were so different, and so handing over to the office team at Pennine the Mabel workload, which by that point we turned over $250,000 in our first year, but our second year Mabel actually turned over $1 million. So by that point it was quite a big workload, and we were handing that over to that team, and the work was of different nature to what they were used to, and the processes that we had were different to what they were used to. So I was probably a little bit soft about it. I tried to hold on to things, not only because I'd been doing it and I wanted it done my way, but I felt a bit bad that I was changing things or giving them things that were, different to what they were used to doing in their day to day. So I think that's the one thing that I wish I'd probably done a little bit differently or gave more thought to. I think because of the way that the acquisition happened, the previous owners, which I totally understand, didn't want to tell the staff much in advance, and I'm talking they only found out some of them on the day that we actually bought it. So we didn't really have a chance to plan and to integrate ourselves into the company. And I think with hindsight, I would have probably pushed a bit harder on that, because I think that planning and integration would have been really key. Whereas we went into Pennine at full speed ahead, hit the ground running, loads of work, loads of projects that were work in progress, and there was just no time to stop and take that helicopter view that everyone talks about all the time. It was very much just kind of churning through things.
I think you've just answered my next question to say, which was really if there was one piece of advice that you could give yourself and Dave, looking back now, about since the start of Mabel Group, the acquisition of Pennine, everything that's happened. What bit of advice would you give yourselves now, and saying, or would it be that when the acquisition goes through, just take a little bit of time, just to plan a little bit more and think about the leadership and the approach of the merging the two cultures?
It probably would have been that, but it also, I definitely think that. I think I would have put my foot down about having that longer handover period, and making sure, because that was the most difficult thing. And woe is me, but for the first year, we had no time, it was literally just, there was, never mind personal, there was no time even to think about the strategic side of the business or anything. And that's partially because of us not managing it very well, because it was just so overwhelming and everything went so big so fast.
I think the core of your business is the people a lot of the time. And you need to look after them.
Yeah. Exactly. But if there was one bit of advice, it would be to utilise professional advisors, not only during the acquisition but afterwards. And that's the one with 2020 vision now. If I would have retained more support to help us ongoing, just to hold us accountable. The one thing I really, really miss is having a boss.
Do you have a non-exec director?
We're just about to put someone in place, but I wish we'd done it sooner.
Right.
So we're a year and a half into the acquisition now, and we're just putting that in place. But I wish we'd done it from the get-go, because the one thing, when you've got a small business, it feels nice to have your own autonomy, but I think as your business grows, and especially when it grows at the pace that ours did, the one thing I found myself really craving was somebody to hold me accountable, not because I wasn't doing my job, but actually someone to refocus your priorities a little bit. I think is really key. And I think when you've grown a business and when you're in the thick of it, and our business is a lot bigger, but it's still a small business, you do get very in the day-to-day of things. And I think it's really important to have someone who refocuses your priorities and keeps you looking at that helicopter view, and that you're not too stuck in the day-to-day weeds of running it. And
I think that's one of the big values of a non-exec director. Yeah, absolutely.
Undoubtedly.
So would there be one other piece of advice, maybe for other business owners that are contemplating doing something quite risky? Obviously, it was a big risk. It was a big, investment to make, and a lot of money to raise in order to buy the business. So if somebody else is contemplating it, thinking, "Oh, I'm not sure I can do it," Is there something that you could say to them other than just go for it?
No, do you know what? The last time I did something like this with you guys, I remember the advice that I gave, and it is pretty much just go for it. Just don't think about it. Because if you think about it, if you say, you know, if you've got a good gut instinct that you're doing the right thing, run with it. And actually, that if I was going to give more advice, that would be is over the last year and a half. You know, it's been a roller coaster. It's been a baptism of fire at times. You know, it has been really intense. And the one thing that I've probably got a little bit of regret about is that there's been times when I've doubted myself and I haven't went with my gut because I've overthought. And I didn't do that at the acquisition stage. But my advice would be to totally trust your gut instinct. And to be honest, probably only over the last few weeks that I've really kind of came back to that. Right. And I used to always kind of rule with my gut, and then, you know, when you make massive big life changes like what we've done, sometimes you do have a bit of a crisis of confidence. And I feel like at times over the last year and a half I definitely have, but do just trust in your gut instinct, and if you feel like it's right, then go for it.
Brilliant.
And
so what's next for obviously you talked about the two companies will merge at some point, and combined I think the turnover now of the two companies is 2.5 million.
About that, yeah.
In a very short space of time. We are only still just in 2022.
Yeah.
So what are you looking to do next? Where will you take it now?
So we are not looking to grow our turnover. We're looking to maintain where we are and focus on what we deliver. So, you know, delivering really efficiently, improving margins, balancing the world today with what, you know, our industry, where sometimes people are coming back to us now to go ahead with works that were quoted sometimes kind of 2 years ago. You know, playground, they'll get a design and a quote and they'll go out and fundraise for it. They'll be selling cupcakes and, you know, stuff like that. And then they come back and you're like, oh God, it's a different world today, sorry. So yeah, we're really looking to continue. The last few months we've done loads of work on kind of consolidating and just improving process and things within the business. So we're going to keep working on that. We're doing a little bit of our own manufacturing out of Newcastle. So we've just recently adapted our facilities up here. So that's not going to be a revolutionary change to our business. It is very much small, controlled, in the direction that we want to head in. Yeah. So we're not making any massive big changes, but we are just looking to kind of continue. It feels like over the last couple of months we've hit a good level. The stress is starting to come away a little bit, and one of the things that we've done is, and we didn't do this, and this is where maybe having an exec director would have helped us, is and I think every business owner, a lot of business owners do this, is me and Dave didn't have really defined roles. And I've seen so many people make the mistake, so I don't know how we made the mistake for so long. But for so long, I was really involved in operations and I was trying to look after everything, and would end up, you know, when we were up against it with the schedule, would send Dave out on site and stuff like that. Whereas we've got a really clear line now. Dave deals with ops, I deal with sales and finance. Okay. So we're going to kind of really nurture our roles like that, and hopefully, you know, I'll be able to take, and I am taking a higher level kind of strategic look at the company. So the plan is to just kind of keep on what we've been doing for the last few months and slowly consolidation
prior to planning for the next stage. Yeah.
You know, a company can't grow from 250 to 2.5 million and not have a bumpy road, and you know, so it is very much to get back to us being really comfortable with what we're doing.
That's brilliant. So I'm just going to check to see if we've got any questions, if there's anything that's come through from anybody. So not particularly. Well, that's great. That means means that you must have covered absolutely everything that everybody wanted to hear about us, which is brilliant. So just leaves me to say thank you very much, Christina.
Thank you.
It's been fascinating hearing about both Mabel Group and Pennine Playgrounds. I wish you all the success into the future.
Thank you.
Please keep working with Scale Up,
We will.
and I'm hoping that we've helped and we continue to help.
Definitely have.
If there's anybody else out there that is a growing business that has the ambition, as Christina did, and the drive to really, really grow their business, then by all means, please get in touch. The Scale Up programme will be running until towards the end of March this time next year. And you can get us on www.scaleupnortheast, all one word, .co.uk. And this will also be coming out as a podcast as well. I believe we've got one question that's just coming in. It sounds like, from your perspective, the acquisition was almost had started to go ahead before the pandemic.
Yes.
And then decided to carry. You just decided to keep going.
Yeah, just don't stop.
Yeah, saw a window of opportunity.
Yeah, I think it depends what industry you're in as well, doesn't it? So we were really lucky that our industry wasn't really badly affected. You know, we work outdoors. We're in construction, so we did furlough our staff for the first kind of 3 weeks or so, but after that we put measures in place and we were back at work. A lot, you know, our key clients are schools, local authorities, holiday parks, that kind of thing, particularly with people holidaying in the UK. Our industry's actually grown during the last couple of years. So I think we've been really fortunate to be in an industry that, you know, with COVID, it was kind of potluck, wasn't it? Some industries did really well. And I remember talking to our accountant kind of probably about a year ago, or maybe a little bit less than that. And he was saying, you know, he knows a number of companies who are doing really well, but he also knew loads of companies who were really suffering during the pandemic. And like I say, it was kind of potluck on whether or not you were in one of those industries or not. And we were just really fortunate that we were in one that has continued, has not been really negatively affected. There's still been challenges, but they've been challenges that we've been able to work around. And
they've been temporary, as in we've come in and out of lockdown, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So yeah, I guess that.
Thank you. I don't think we've got any more questions. So on that note, I will just say thank you very much, Christina. Thanks everybody for watching, if you're out there. And as I say, we'll make sure that this podcast is available for people to watch over LinkedIn. So keep an eye out on LinkedIn, and then you could be able to pick it up and show everybody else about it as well. Thank you.